Hi, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Just waved me into the glass box like I was a delivery guy, not the senior client director who'd carried the company through 2 recessions. My name's Rex Halford. I'm 58 years old. I'd been at Proctor Mason Realty in Denver for 21 years, and this was how it ended. Half the blinds were tilted, like somebody gave up adjusting them. Gray light washed the table. Gavin Pierce sat there with his laptop open, but his eyes down, like the screen was more important than me. Across from him sat Lena Ortiz, arms crossed, one leg draped over the other, watching me like she already knew how this movie ended. "Thanks for coming, Rex. This won't take long," Gavin said, all clipped and rehearsed. He didn't waste time, just launched into a string of buzzwords. Restructuring, leaner, tech forward, fresh energy. Same empty crap consultants feed to dying companies right before they jump ship. I glanced at Lena. She didn't blink. "What does impacted mean?" I asked. He slid a folder across the table like it might burn him. That was my answer. I opened it, HR boilerplate, release forms, the whole knife in the back. 21 years, I said. 62 million under management, 94% client retention. I built the rescue protocols. I kept Barrett Equity from walking last winter. You remember that? He gave me this fake tight smile. "We appreciate your contributions." Translation: pack your shit and get out. My jaw didn't move, but my heart was thudding. I was counting every time Gavin had undercut me the last couple years, talking over me in meetings, calling me old school when I questioned the flashy platform upgrades he blew 6 figures on. I pushed back, so he tagged me resistant to innovation. That was his first shovel of dirt. Lena stood up, smooth voice like a nurse putting down a dog. "We'll need your badge and device by end of day." "You'll get them," I said, standing, "after I clear my office." She followed me with her eyes, like she owned the place. I didn't give her the little goodbye nod she wanted. I walked. The bullpen went dead quiet. Nobody looked up, not even the new kid. I shut my office door, looked at the desk where I'd put out fires and closed deals since dial-up days. The first thing I packed was my boy's graduation photo. Wrapped it in an old Proctor hoodie. Then came the nameplate from my promotion, a chipped mug, and a stack of thank you cards from clients. I didn't cry. I just felt heat behind my eyes. I lifted the box. It wasn't the stuff that felt heavy. It was everything it meant. Then I walked out. Word count, 632. The elevator ride down felt like a drop you don't brace for. My ears popped. The doors opened into the garage and the cold air cut straight through my jacket. I set the box on the passenger seat of my old Tahoe and just sat there with my hands on the wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. No panic, just that hollow buzz in my head, like a room after the power goes out. The drive home was muscle memory. Red lights, green lights, same streets I'd driven for years. When I got to the apartment, the quiet hit hard, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the refrigerator hum and the pipes knock. I hung up my coat, set the box on the table, made coffee I didn't drink. I stared at the photo of my son, Marty, taped to the fridge, hard hat, sunburned face, 2 states away doing construction. I'd always told him, "Do the job right and you'll be fine." Standing there in my socks, that line sounded thin. I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair by the window and watched the city glow fade. Around 1:40 a.m., my phone lit up with a number I didn't know. I almost let it ring out. Something told me not to. "Rex," Gavin said. His voice was tight, fast. "We've got an outage. Back end's failing. Portal's timing out. Support lines are swamped. I need you." I leaned back and looked at the ceiling. The fan wasn't moving. "You replaced the system I built," I said. "You got what you bought?" "This isn't personal," he said. "We're losing access and maybe data." "Then you should have listened when I warned you about skimping on failovers," I said, and I hung up. I sat there until the room felt smaller, like the walls were inching in. At 3:58 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, it was his actual number. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. "Lena can't stabilize it," he said. "Cloud sync's looping, backups aren't triggering. The client portal's throwing codes nobody recognizes. We need you here." I poured a glass of water and took a slow sip. "Not my emergency anymore," I said. "I do consulting." He went quiet. I gave him my terms. $1,480 an hour. Contract signed up front, full access. No interference, no committee calls. That's unreasonable, he said. You're 5 hours from a class action if client data gets touched, I said. That's me being reasonable. He tried the angle he thought would work. You care about the people here. I care about not being used, I said. There was breathing on the line. Finally, he said, legal would draft something. I told him I'd be around when it hit my inbox. I ended the call, set the phone face down on the table, and let the night crawl past me. At 6:05 a.m., the email came in. Subject line, consulting draft. Thin 3-pager, boilerplate terms, nothing locked down. Paragraph 2 had a limp apology. We regret the circumstances of your departure. Then they lowballed the rate with a line that made me bark a laugh into my coffee. Assumes mid-level support scope. I opened the doc, added my terms and read. My rate, no assumptions. Non-interference clause, full audit access, indemnity coverage, payment wired same day, not net 30. And I made damn sure there was no gag language anywhere. If they wanted my help, they weren't getting to muzzle me after. I hit send. 10 minutes later, legal shot back a one-word reply. Approved. I shut the laptop. Walked straight to the bathroom, showered, shaved, dried off fast. I put on a dark blazer, clean shirt, and boots I could stand in all day. Pulled the cigar box from my dresser and opened it. Inside was the flash drive I'd built over years, every stable version of my system architecture, labeled by hand, backed up twice. I drove into downtown with the sun just starting to rise over the Front Range. That early morning gold across the peaks almost fooled me into feeling calm. I pulled into the underground garage beneath Proctor Mason, parked, let the truck idle, sat there staring through the windshield. Last night they tossed me out like I was already dead. This morning, they were paying me to pull the body out of the fire. The lobby was quiet. One security guard nursing a gas station coffee nodded as I passed. No words. Nobody asked me to badge in. The elevator up to 7 had a smell I recognized and hated. Burnt plastic and hot dust. Overheated hardware. Last time I smelled that, we lost a backup array in under 8 minutes. The doors opened into chaos. Phones ringing, people shouting, dashboards flashing red on every screen, interns with wide eyes and clammy foreheads. A woman in finance was crying in a hallway corner. Gavin spotted me from across the floor and came fast, sleeves rolled, sweat under his arms. Thank God, he said. I walked right past him. The server room door was propped open. That wasn't a good sign either. I stepped inside and heat slapped me in the face. Loud fans, red lights everywhere, main console blinking overloads. CPU temps well past safe. Nothing throttled, nothing staggered. I turned to the nearest tech. Who the hell greenlit real-time analytics on the primary? Gavin shuffled in behind me, hands open. Lena said it would optimize usage tracking. I swore under my breath and dropped to one knee, pulled the lower panel on the rack. Logs showed memory leaks the size of sinkholes. Queue jammed. Requests stacked so deep the system was choking on its own traffic. There was no room left, no headroom, no failover, no pulse. I plugged in my flash drive and started pulling logs, turned to the tech. We're initiating a full 14-hour stage shutdown, rotation and cooldown, starting with the main server, then support. No exceptions, no parallel jobs. He nodded like someone stepping off a burning bus. Gavin didn't like it. That's not an option, he said. Frying your processors is less of one, I said. You called me, now get out of my way. He didn't move at first, then he backed off. That was the first smart thing he'd done in days. I took the chair by the console, cracked my knuckles, and slowed my breathing. Kill non-essential services first, freeze the client portal, quarantine the analytics pipeline, kick off thermal cooldown cycles, one step at a time, no panic. A shadow moved at my shoulder. Lena, holding a tablet like it meant something. I can help, she said, calm on the surface. I kept my eyes on the temperature gauges. If you knew what you were doing, I wouldn't be here. Her arms folded again. That was her go-to move. She stayed there, watching, but didn't say another word. I opened a second terminal and started pulling everything. Warnings, dump files, heat maps, system logs. Failure flags lit up like flares. I traced the exact timestamps where Gavin's golden modernization stripped every layer of redundancy I'd built. The system didn't fail on its own, it was gutted. And while I was putting out fires, I was also building a case. If Gavin tried to shift blame, I wanted to walk into any room with hard proof and end the conversation before it started. The first hour was triage. Temps dropped from full panic, red, to a deep orange. Not safe, but better. The fans, which had been screaming like dying engines, evened out to a steady roar. With the portal frozen, support calls spiked, but at least the system wasn't cooking itself anymore. Outside the glass walls, the floor looked like a war zone. Phones ringing off the hook, managers pacing in circles, staff wide-eyed like people watching a levee break. I saw one of the junior techs just staring at his monitor, frozen. Couldn't even blink. Around 9, 2 board members showed up. Black coats, expensive shoes. They hovered just outside the room like deer spooked by a noise they didn't understand. Gavin was right there, whispering, pointing, talking like he had it handled. They looked through the glass at me. Couldn't tell if they saw a firefighter or a walking liability. I didn't care. I kept going. By hour 3, the cool-down cycles held. The heat stabilized. The console stopped screaming red and blinked soft amber instead. Still critical, but manageable. I wrote a new staging script from scratch. No fancy wrapping, no consultant nonsense, just clean logic. Service order reintroductions, time delays, pressure checks. Real architecture, not PowerPoint slides. I opened a new folder and labeled it negligence_proof. Inside it, I stacked every override, every bypassed failover, every triggered memory leak. Layer by layer, I sorted the rot from the bones. I wasn't leaving any of this to memory, not this time. Not after they tried to toss me out and call it fresh energy. I reached for another backup drive and kept going, let Gavin talk. I was writing the real version. By midday, the heat dropped to something that didn't feel like a furnace. The fans finally sounded like fans, not jet engines about to fail. I cracked my back and started the real work. Staged shutdown, mainframe first, then support servers. Then the half-dozen shiny toys bolted on after the fact. No shortcuts, no panic moves, just slow and steady, one kill switch at a time. The on-call tech hovered next to me like a shadow. Couldn't have been more than 24, maybe. Big eyes, shaky hands. I walked him through each step and watched him scribble notes like his next rent check depended on it. Honestly, it probably did. None of this was his fault. He didn't jam modern analytics through a system with no guardrails. That came from above, and I was naming names. Lena leaned into the doorway again, still holding that same damn tablet like it gave her authority. "Are we keeping the analytics platform?" she asked. "We'll revisit it after we rebuild the spine." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means we go back to basics," I said. "Load balancing, failovers, staggered cache, sane thresholds, real QA. The stuff that keeps a system alive when you're not looking." She didn't say anything after that. I ran a full system snapshot. Every running process, temp log, memory buffer, user credential, task queue, froze it all in time. Then I went further. 6-month admin activity pull, every credentialed change, every pushed update, every override, every skipped QA tag, every red flag tucked behind a scheduled job at 2 a.m. The pattern was already there, clear as day. Push features in the middle of the peak traffic windows, queue, a checkbox is bypassed with admin privileges, and backup schedules that had been dialed down without notice. Cost-cutting dressed up as optimization. That wasn't incompetence. That was deliberate. I didn't get mad. I got methodical. I labeled everything. Folder 1, bypassed_QA. Folder 2, removed _redundancies. Folder 3, unauthorized underscores overrides. Folder 4, leadership underscores sign-offs. I tagged each file by timestamp and user ID, made it so clear even a third-party auditor wouldn't need to ask questions. Then I copied the entire set to 2 encrypted drives, one on me, one off-site. I also pushed a cold backup to a private cloud server under my consulting firm's name, because getting older teaches you one thing above all else: memory's cheap. Receipts are gold. Late afternoon, the server room finally felt like a machine again, not a furnace about to die. The air didn't buzz anymore. Temps were holding. Load was balanced. The system had stopped bleeding. Outside the glass, the floor had thinned out. Phones still rang, but people weren't panicking. You could feel the difference in how they moved. Less frantic, more focused. A couple of folks even looked my way like they remembered who I was. The board members vanished. No wave, no handshake, just slipped out like they never came. Gavin stopped hovering, probably off somewhere sweating through another dress shirt, trying to script his version of the story. I didn't care. I stayed in the chair and kept working, cleaned out ghost jobs from the queue, reset backup intervals, killed every leftover instance of the analytics service. I even flagged 3 suspicious remote connections they'd never noticed. Probably more where that came from. This wasn't just repair work. This was forensic recovery while walking on a tightrope. It felt like changing a tire on a moving truck while writing down, step by step, who loosened the lug nuts in the first place. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. After midnight, when the floor finally went dark and the panic crowd thinned, I rolled up my sleeves and went deeper. Not just surface logs. I dove into the buried stuff. Deep cycle diagnostics, scheduler histories, the system event matrix, and the back-end security stack that records who pushes what and when. If there was a ghost in the machine, I was going to name it. And sure enough, the spikes told a story. Same time windows, same process IDs. A pattern so obvious it almost felt lazy. A recurring update sequence that bypassed my stagger protocols, tripped memory usage caps, and stripped out failovers like they were luxury add-ons instead of the damn backbone. No randomness, no shared logins. The credentials all pointed to one name, Gavin Pierce. No 2auth. No review chain, no QA sign-off. All done late nights and weekends, when the noise was low and no one was watching. And it wasn't once or twice. It was regular, like he had a damn calendar reminder. I didn't get mad, didn't curse, just opened a fresh directory and started saving every file, checked the hashes, locked down the metadata, stacked the proof in clean rows, labeled each one so clearly a jury could follow it without asking a question. He'd tried to kill my system from the inside, slowly, quietly. So when it failed, it would look like it aged out, like the old guy's code finally cracked under pressure. He was setting the stage to blame me while handing the future to someone else. Not anymore. By 4:10 a.m., the system was stable on my original cycling protocols. Every fancy bolt-on stripped out. Temps holding. Error lights off. Fans humming like they were built to. I leaned back and rolled my shoulders, feeling the stiffness set in. My shirt clung to me. My neck ached. But the hum was clean. The fight was no longer about survival. Now, it was about truth. At 7 on the dot, Gavin called. His voice was light. Too light. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "You stepped in when we needed you. The board's grateful. I'd like to offer you a position of trust, full autonomy, maybe even board credit." I let him finish. Then I said, "I'll think about it," and hung up. I've learned not to argue with men who only say sorry after the boat's already under. 1 minute later, Lena texted, "Glad we got it back online." I walked the board through our fix. Our fix. I stared at the message. No punctuation, no hesitation. Just a quiet rewrite of the truth before the ink was even dry. I set the phone face down on the desk. They were already shaping the story, giving themselves roles they didn't earn, trying to turn this whole thing into just another crisis handled by leadership. Fine, they could have their version, I had my own, and I wasn't planning to keep it to myself. Scene 7. The low ball and the counter word count. 674. Target, 660 plus, or minus 5%, waspas. Range, 627 to 693. The next morning, Gavin's assistant greeted me like I was a guest, not the guy who kept their entire operation from turning into a smoking crater. She walked me down the hall like I needed escorting, heels clicking, eyes too polite. Gavin was already standing when I walked in, hands braced on the back of his chair like he thought posture could fake authority. He didn't offer a handshake, just slid a thin folder across the desk, neat and centered. 8-week consulting proposal, he said. 31,000. Half up front, the rest on completion. Scope is knowledge transfer to internal staff. I looked at it, didn't touch it. "That's what you're bringing?" I asked. He gave the same boardroom smile I'd seen 100 times. It reflects market rates for mid-level support. I'm not mid-level, I said. I'm the reason your portal isn't dead and your clients aren't reading about a data breach in the Denver Post. He sat, tried to look calm, like I hadn't just knocked the wind out of his little negotiation. It's a temporary need. We can bring in a third party. You're not irreplaceable. Then why haven't you? I asked. He didn't have an answer that mattered. I pulled a thicker folder from my bag and set it down in front of him. My terms, not a bluff, a contract. 9-month retention, I said, at my rate, with a recovery bonus tied to uptime and performance metrics. He flipped a page. This is aggressive. Full system access, I continued. Direct architectural authority. No Lena. No outside firms touching the spine. Weekly payments. Audit rights. Non-disparagement both ways. He reached the end and shook his head. This is triple what we budgeted. Then triple the budget, I said. You're pushing it. No, I said. I'm done being pushed. He leaned back, arms crossed, probably thinking he looked like the adult in the room. Why would we ever agree to this? I stood, took my folder back, slow and deliberate. Because no one else can fix it in time, and you know it. He didn't argue. That was all the confirmation I needed. You're overestimating your leverage, I said, and underestimating mine. He opened his mouth again, but I cut him off. Clock's ticking, Gavin. Every day you stall is another client you lose, another call from the board, another thread you can't control. I turned and walked. He didn't stop me, didn't say another word. I heard the air shift behind me like he'd finally sunk into the chair. The same chair he pulled out from under me not even 48 hours ago. Let him sit in it now. That's something I've learned. When someone cuts your legs out from under you, don't fight to stand back up on their terms. Let them sit in the empty room they built. Let them feel the silence. Back home, I dropped my keys on the counter, pulled off the blazer, and went straight to the laptop. Contract draft still open from earlier. I tightened the audit clause, gave it real teeth this time, rewrote the liability section so clean a judge could read it out loud. If Gavin signed this version, there'd be no loopholes to crawl through later. Then, my inbox lit up. Subject line. You should see this. No name, no greeting. Just a zip file attached. Normally, I delete that kind of thing without blinking, but something in my gut kept my hand on the mouse. I opened a sandbox, scanned it twice, then cracked it open. Emails, internal memos, transaction logs, file trails, PDF scans with signatures. One document hit like a shovel. Projected infrastructure stress points, external sync trial, dated 4 months ago. Gavin's signature on page 2. But the letterhead wasn't ours. Northgate Capital Partners, a competitor we'd gone head-to-head with twice, both times on major bids. Same firm that suddenly started beating our numbers in RFP meetings. I'd chalked it up to better marketing. I was wrong. There was an NDA. There were payment schedules. There were weekend file transfers logged with Gavin's credentials, time-stamped right in line with the back-end failures I'd traced just days earlier. He wasn't just sloppy. He was strategic, feeding them the guts of our architecture while jamming up our system from the inside. So when things blew, it wouldn't look like a sellout. It'd look like legacy systems falling apart. And I was supposed to be the fall guy. I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I forwarded the entire package to my attorney with one line, call me at 8 a.m. This changes everything. Then I backed it up 3 times, cloud, flash, and an off-site hard drive I hadn't touched since my divorce. You don't get second chances with files like these. The next morning, I walked straight into the building. Gavin's assistant stood up as I passed, tried to stop me. Mr. Halford, I didn't slow down. I opened his door without knocking and dropped the printed stack on his desk. He froze, phone in one hand, mid-conversation. His face went pale. What's this? He asked. Proof, I said, of what you've been doing. He set the phone down like it might explode. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I said. You sabotaged your own infrastructure to grease a side deal with Northgate. Then you tried to frame me as the bottleneck. He opened his mouth, probably reaching for the let's be reasonable card. I cut him off. I already sent everything to counsel, I said. If I don't get everything I'm owed, and more, I send this to the board and to every business outlet between here and Cheyenne. His throat worked like he was trying to swallow a nail. This could ruin me. I stared straight through him. Good, I said, and walked out. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Boardroom, 20 minutes, no name, no please. I grabbed the same folder and nothing else. The boardroom lights were too bright, like they wanted the truth to sweat. 9 board members sat around the table, suits sharp, faces tight. The kind of faces people wear when they already know something's wrong, but don't know how bad yet. Gavin stood at the far end with his arms folded, trying to look solid. He didn't look at me. I didn't sit. I laid the pages out across the table, slow and flat, and started talking like I was explaining gravity. You trusted a modernization pitch that stripped the bones out of a working system, I said. You were told it was innovation. It was sabotage dressed up as progress. A woman near the middle leaned forward. That's a strong accusation. It's a documented one, I said. The man pushing it signed an NDA with Northgate Capital Partners. He moved internal documents off our servers. He bypassed QA. He forced updates that made failure look like age, not intent. One board member snapped, "Excuse me?" like I'd kicked the table. The files are already in your inboxes, I said. Time-stamped, verified, admin logs tied directly to Gavin's credentials. Another man cleared his throat. Do you have proof of payment? I slid a printed confirmation across the table. His name was right there, date, amount, reference code. The room went quiet in that way rooms do when nobody wants to be the first one to breathe. Gavin finally spoke. This is a hit job, he said. There were exploratory talks about a merger, that's all. Exploratory talks don't come with paid consulting, I said. They don't come with signed NDAs, and they don't involve after-hours code runs that strip firewall protections and reroute sync paths. He opened his mouth again. I didn't let him. You were setting the system up to fail, I said, so it would look like legacy rot, so you could sell the fix and pin the blame. A man at the end rubbed his temples. What do you want, Rex? Not what's fair. Not how do we move forward. What do you want? Not an 8-week patch job, I said. Not a thank you speech. I want control of the firm's digital IP, full authority to rebuild it and guard it, a recovery budget that doesn't get gutted in committee, and a permanent board seat. A couple heads snapped up. You're bleeding trust, I said. With clients and internally. You need someone who knows the pipes and gives a damn about the people paying you. That's me. They didn't argue. They didn't negotiate. They called an emergency vote. No speeches, no drama. Just hands raised and numbers counted. At 1:15 p.m., Gavin's account access was terminated. Security walked him out without a word. He didn't look back. They didn't apologize to me. Didn't thank me either. But the way they looked at me changed. Less like a problem, more like a fixed point. Before sunset, my terms were signed. Control of architecture, public acknowledgement, budget approved. I took the folder, nodded once, and walked out of the boardroom. I didn't pop champagne, didn't take a victory lap. I went straight down to the server room and started scrubbing every line of bad code Gavin's crew had smeared across the system. No shortcuts, no guesswork, just hard reset. I called 3 people I trusted. 2 from my old team, guys who'd been in the trenches with me before Proctor Mason got trendy. The third ran a small dev shop in Fort Collins. Smart, fast, no ego. We spoke the same language, especially when the clock was loud. Titles didn't matter. Work did. We built the rebuild plan in a week, the bones in 3. Nothing flashy, nothing for a slide deck. Just solid. Load balancing back in place. Failovers tested under pressure. Real-world traffic simulations. Not the sandbox demos Gavin used to chase. We rehearsed outages like fire drills. Clients wouldn't see it, but they'd feel it. The portals came back online in stages. Staggered relaunches, controlled volume, no fireworks. Just smooth delivery and excess capacity waiting behind it. Lena tried to stay involved, showed up to meetings with ideas wrapped in polite language, safe words, soft edges. The board slid her into branding and communications within a week. Quiet move, no blow-up. She didn't fight it. We passed in the hall sometimes, nodded like neighbors after a long winter. Clients noticed. The ones who'd frozen budgets thawed. Old buyers who'd written us off started answering calls again. I didn't pitch them, I just showed the numbers. They spoke for themselves. Word got around. Proctor Mason didn't fold. It found its spine. People respect that more than any logo, refresh, or press release. In late summer, they asked me to speak at the Front Range Real Estate Tech Summit. I wore the same blazer I walked out in. Didn't prep a speech, didn't need one. Bright lights, quiet room. I told them the truth. The system wasn't broken, it was ignored. We didn't build something trendy. We built something that holds when things get dark and ugly. The kind of system that doesn't need buzzwords because it just works. People clapped, not because it sounded nice, but because they'd been in those same rooms, watching bad decisions get dressed up as progress. Walking off that stage, I didn't feel young again. I didn't feel old either, I felt steady. They'd tried to make me obsolete. I made myself necessary, and for once, nobody talked over me. Nobody called me old school. They just listened. That was my payback. I didn't torch the place. I rebuilt it. And I left a paper trail so clean, the next Gavin will think twice before trying the same thing. If that's not getting even, it's close enough for me.